Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to give you the full breakdown and deep dive into Ghost, the new speed villain from the Ant-Man and the Wasp update, give you my thoughts, build suggestions for the character, and my overall assessment both with and without the new uniform, because I think both characters are viable. Now, before I get into all of the details and the skills and leadership and stuff like that, I do want to say that these new characters and new uniforms have been, and I think will continue to be, among the more difficult or the most difficult ones that I've had to review and give kind of detailed thoughts about, because they're so complicated and they don't seem to excel or be dominant in any one area. But as I play with them more, I discover more and more things that I can do with them that make them useful, but maybe perhaps not meta defining. And so I think these characters are much more niche in general. I don't think any of them stand out as just, biggest hammer, most damage, best tank. But with the right amount of love and with the right situation, I think they can shine and be above average characters in the game. So to start off, I think one of the most baffling or kind of questioned things about Ghost is the leadership. The technokinetic proficient scientist buff, the 50% all attack, super nice, but who does that apply to? Well, this is the full list of characters that it applies to. It's everyone that has the machine ability in their details page. It's the little purple cog icon. Keep in mind that some of these characters on this list only are on it for their specific uniforms, and I denoted the two, I believe it's 2 or 3 uniforms in brackets, Punisher and Kingpin. In the case of Punisher, when he's wearing War Machine's roadie armor, he has the machine type because War Machine is a machine type as well. But when he has any other of his uniforms where he's not wearing that kind of mechanical armor, he does not have the machine tag, and so he doesn't benefit from the leadership. Now, while it may be a good idea to put Punisher with Ghost for the leadership, keep in mind that Punisher won't take advantage of the tier 2 passive whether you have Ghost's uniform or not, because Punisher doesn't use energy attack. So only some of those characters on the list, like Yellow Jacket, MODOK, Iron Man, and a couple of others, will be able to double dip. That is, get the buff from the leadership of Ghost and the tier 2 passive. But that is a total of 70% all attack, so that's not a small number to play with. It's almost like a buff from a Valkyrie type character, but it only encompasses the leader slot, not the support slot. So that is the case whether you have the uniform or not. Without the uniform, of course, Ghost Tech is a 10% buff only applying to villains, so it does make the character a little bit less flexible. Now, looking forward to the skills, there are quite a few changes that make these characters quite different, and they, I think, play a little bit differently between non-uniform and uniform. I think this non-uniform version is better off or better tailored to kind of single-player PvE content. I think you might find that this character makes it easier to do things like Shadowland, or perhaps even easier to do things like World Boss Ultimate, because of the fact that more of the skills for this kit actually deal damage. There are fewer iframes, but you can get around that. The first skill doesn't have an iframe, but it's got some decent damage, but it's generally a risky skill. The second skill is where you're going to see the most value for something like World Boss Ultimate, because it's got a 3-second mind control, which does apply to bosses, so you can use it kind of like Ebony Maws, kind of like Scarlet Witches, and that's where this character does shine in that kind of content, when it can mind control enemies and it can CC them. And it's also got an iframe. The third skill also has an iframe. It's basically identical between the two uniforms. The fourth skill is just these buff and debuff. It just punches the ground. It's just a skill that does no damage but has all of these effects with the refreshing guard hit. And then you've got the fifth skill, which is a decent damage skill but a long iframe. And so pairing the second skill iframe and mind control with the third skill iframe and the fifth skill iframe, you can basically just cycle between those 3 skills, and because you have all those iframes, but because you have continuous damage from all 3 skills, you're able to kind of consistently chip down your enemies. I don't think Ghost is a super powerhouse character. Even after I equipped Ghost with a 200% damage proc with Guard Break Immunity, I didn't find the numbers too impressive, so that is why I'm leaning towards a defensive build, but I'm still not there yet as far as personally testing it out. For the uniformed version, it's a little bit different, and this version I think might be better geared towards PvP content, but not autoplayed PvP. And I still have to do some testing, of course, but from the testing that I did in Timeline, Ghost just doesn't prioritize her skills well enough on autoplay, and just doesn't understand moments as the AI wouldn't when you can actually use skills. The beautiful part about Ghost when you're using the character in manual PvP, so manual Timeline, I know it's not everyone's favorite, but it's a possibility, is that the fifth skill does not need an enemy present. It doesn't need a target to cast, and it's a long iframe. It has buffs and debuffs, and it triggers a fear effect. So essentially what you can do on autoplay is after you kill a character, let's say Jean Grey, and you're waiting for her to respawn or just to kind of revive, you can cast the 5th skill. So Jean Grey will come back to life but won't see you because you're iframing, and then they will immediately be feared if they don't have their debuff leadership active. Now of course this strategy leans on the fact that the character won't have a debuff leadership, but it's similar to the way that Winter Soldier can kill a character with his 5th skill with the fear effect on the ground, the smoke, and then the next character that rolls in, that summons in or spawns in, will be continuously feared by that effect. And I was able to pull this off pretty consistently after only a few tries on manual, and this is where I think this character shines. It's not as good in World Boss Ultimate because the fear effect does not apply, and so Ghost just stands there doing nothing. The boss stands there, and you have to be very, very close to the boss to actually do damage. So overall, I think this 5th skill does less damage than her other 5th skill without the uniform. Otherwise, the skills are basically the same. Her 1st and 2nd skills are technically better because they both have iframes and better damage. However, on the 2nd skill, you do lose the mind control, so that's why I think this uniform is worse for something like World Boss Ultimate. And the 3rd skill is exactly the same. It's got a nice iframe, you can move the character around, and it's got good damage. So that is the breakdown of the different skills. The 4-star passive does change. It's 100% chance versus 60, but honestly, in my testing against Wolverines and Captain Americas, this barely triggered, and when it did, it just didn't do enough, and it didn't do it for long enough, so I wouldn't count on this at all. Unfortunately, I think it might save you from maybe getting one-shotted by an apocalypse or something like that, but if it's going to save you, it's only going to save you once for the entire fight, and that's it. And a mechanic like that just can't be counted on consistently. As far as where I would place the character among all the different paywalls, because this character does have that premium tag associated with them, and I won't have Nadia on this list yet just because I don't have the character at tier 2, I can't fully comment on that. If I throw up the list of all of the kind of fully paywall characters now that we've never seen an event battle for Luna Snow again, RIP event battle, I would probably put Ghost firmly underneath Luna Snow and Spider-Man 2099. So I do think that the character, with or without the uniform, is probably as good, if not better, than the likes of Agent Venom and Enchantress. And then of course the rest are just quite a bit worse. Given the fact that the charm skill from Enchantress is similar to the mind control that Ghost has, but in addition to the fact that he's got the leadership, that he's got the uniform for even more potential, he's got the tier 2 passive that buffs teammates whether they're villains or otherwise, and the fact that Ghost takes up a very premium, very rare typing as a speed villain. We don't have a huge use for this typing right now outside of Shadowland, but in the future we might have a change to ABX or some new kind of game mode, or maybe once they make Alliance Raid better, that might be a thing, and then Ghost will actually rise in value. And also, Ghost is taking up the very rare spot of being an energy damage dealing speed type, which of course we only have Green Goblin and Luna Snow to kind of have that spot right now. As far as the build goes, I think that Hawk's Eye is a reasonable build for the character because of the cooldown and because of the dodge. It may not be ideal, but you can of course go with something like Power of Angry Hulk or Overdrive. You could also go for something like Drastic Density Enhancement. The more I play with the character, the more I'm starting to lean towards a more defensive build. I wouldn't go for Stark Backing or some kind of heal, but the bubble from the drastic density in addition to the all attack and the max HP and the ignore defense may be a good combination of things. I find that Ghost dies just a little bit too quickly, and the fact that Ghost only has one guard ability with the Intel Gathering and no other kind of immunities or invincibilities makes the character quite squishy, and that's also why I would recommend a defensive Obelisk. A CTP of Refinement might work very, very well, and I might end up testing that out, but I don't think a damage proc is the way to go, although I've seen a lot of CTPs of Destruction already on the character. Guard Break immunity is quite nice because the 4th skill doesn't offer that, but with iframes on 5, 1, and 2, and 3, I'm not sure if this uniform really needs the guard break immunity. I didn't see myself getting guard broken too much, but it is a possibility. So that is the overall assessment of Ghost, the character. Whether or not Ghost is going to make it into the meta is kind of still up in the air. With a rank 93 Ghost, I can tell you that I don't think that'll be the case, but that is my assessment after only a couple of days, so I'm a bit tentative on that. perhaps when the character can get to level 70, perhaps when their gears can get upgraded a little bit more, and we can see some kind of more maxed out stats, we'll be able to reach a more concrete conclusion. But I also leave it up to you guys. What do you think of Ghost? What do you think of the uniform? And where would you put this paywall character amongst the other ones? And if you have Nadia tier 2, how do you think Nadia matches up to Ghost? My personal opinion is that Nadia is going to out DPS Ghost by quite a lot. But both of those characters, as far as crowd control goes, are going to rely on fighting characters that don't have debuff. Kind of in the same way that Spider-Man is much worse against characters who can just ignore his webbing 24/7. But when you can't ignore the webbing, the character is basically super dominant. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. Hit the bell if you don't want to miss any of my uploads. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.